So this book is called Bhakti, Art of Eternal Love. So in this is actually a translation from Rupa Goswami's book, Nectar of Devotion. So this book was written about 520 something years ago, 520, 530 years ago in Vrindavan by Rupa Goswami. And in that he talks about what does bhakti mean. So he says that pure devotional service brings relief from all kinds of material distress. So in the material world, we have desires and they cause us distress. Just like Gautam Buddha says, desire is the root cause of all misery. Right? So all these desires are swirling in our mind and they cause us distress. Oh, I want to buy this house. I want to buy this car. Should I marry or not marry? This, that, so many things. Every day, every moment, we are always in this struggle for desires. So when we do pure devotional service, it brings relief. So there is a difference between devotional service and pure devotional service. Devotional service is what we are trying to do, but pure devotional service is one step higher than that. So the first one is called Klesha Agni Nivrita, means your various kleshas that are there in the material world, you are eliminating them through pure devotional service. Second is known as Shubhada, means all Shubh, right? Everything will be auspicious. So pure devotional service is beginning of all auspiciousness. Then pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. So right now we are in material pleasure, right? So if you watch a game or something on TV or watch a movie, we get some temporary pleasure. But this is transcendental pleasure. Temporary pleasure means it will start and it will go away. Whereas this transcendental pleasure, you're always there. Just like in the Prabhupada's time, one marijuana addict came and asked, Prabhupada, so what does the spiritual world look like? So Prabhupada saw that this fellow was Dhammaradam, he's a marijuana addict. So he said, it is like swimming in an ocean of marijuana. Just as a joke, right? Basically, because this fellow cannot understand anything higher, he said, it's like swimming in an ocean of marijuana, so that he can relate to it. So that's what it is. It's basically transcendental pleasure is higher than material pleasure. Material pleasure has a beginning and an end, whereas transcendental pleasure, once you come to that state, it is always blissful. And then pure devotional service, pure bhakti is rarely achieved. So not everybody will get this. Those in pure devotional service deride the conception of liberation. So even if the Lord comes and says, okay, now I'll liberate you, he'll say, no, I don't want liberation, my Lord. I want to serve you. So even they don't give much value to the concept of liberation. So normally everybody would like to be liberated from this material distresses, but a pure devotee doesn't even care for that. And then it says pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. Krishna means, the word Krishna means all attractive. And Rama means supreme pleasure. So when we chant this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, we are connecting with the all attractive and the supreme pleasure. That is why we become blissful when we chant the mantra. So Krishna is all attractive, but pure devotional service attracts even him. So when a pure devotee is rendering seva to Krishna, Krishna becomes like so obliged to that devotee. So he will now start listening to what the devotee says, because he knows that this particular devotee is very, very pure. Therefore, the pure devotional service or Shuddha Bhakti is even transcendently stronger than Krishna himself. Right? So Krishna is very powerful, omnipotent. Is there anything more powerful than Krishna? Pure bhakti to Krishna is more powerful than Krishna. Then Krishna will start coming in control of the devotee. And that's because it's Krishna's internal potency known as Yoga Maya. These are all advanced subject matters. We may not understand everything right now, but we need to at least theoretically understand it and focus our efforts in gaining that. Okay, Raj, can you please read this?
In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that one should surrender unto him, giving up all other engagements. The Lord also gives his word there that he will protect surrendered souls from the reactions of all sinful activities. Srila Rupa Goswami says that the distresses from sinful activities are due both to the sins themselves and to sins committed in our past lives. Generally, one commits sinful activities due to ignorance, but ignorance is no excuse for evading the reaction distresses. Sinful activities are of two kinds, those which are mature and those which are not mature. The sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment are called mature. The many sinful activities stored within us for which we have not yet suffered are considered immature. For example, a man may have committed criminal acts but not yet been arrested for them. Now, as soon as he is detected, arrest is awaiting him. Similarly, for some of our sinful activities, we are awaiting distresses in the future, and for others, we are mature, we are suffering at the present moment. In this way, there is a chain of sinful activities and their concomitant distresses, and the conditioned soul is suffering life after life due to these sins. He is suffering in the present life the results of sinful activities from his past life, and he is meanwhile creating further sufferings for his future life. Mature sinful activities are exhibited if one is suffering from some chronic disease, if one is suffering from some legal implication, if one is born in a low and degraded family, or if one is undereducated or very ugly.
Yeah, so pause there for a moment. I want to show you something. So this is the cycle that is stated in Padma Puran. This is what I shared in my LinkedIn yesterday. So if you look at this, can you read this text here? Is there? Is the text legible enough?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are 4 effects due to sinful activities. So first you commit sin, right? And that sin is dispensed. Maybe if you have 100 units of sin, 0.1% of the sin is dispensed in this lifetime. That is called prarabdha karma. Prior to that, there is aprarabdha karma. Aprarabdha karma means which is like waiting, it's unmanifest. So from prarabdha karma, then there is bija, which is the effect which is lying as a seed. The sin that we conduct in our previous lives and in this life is just waiting like a seed. And at the right moment, as decided by the agents of karma and the Supreme Personality, it becomes kuta, means it is not fructified yet, but it is like waiting, it's bubbling, it's just trying to come out. Then it comes to phalonmukha, means now the sin is mature. Phala means fruit. Phalonmukha means you can see the face of that fruit of your sinful past. And then that part of that is manifest in this lifetime. The rest is aprarabdha. So maybe I should have a little bit of diagram. In the diagrammatic sense, I should have aprarabdha here. Aprarabdha means something that is still waiting to be manifest. Aprarabdha. Right? Prabhupada talks about these things in many, many purports. And this is like classic Hindus also talk about this in many, many cases. So this aprarabdha becomes prarabdha. And then some people also talk in terms of sanchita karma. Sanchi means bag. Sanchita karma means your karma is in form of a bag. Right? So only a portion of that is coming out. So some people refer to this as sanchita karma. So none of us can escape the cycle of karma, right? We have committed so many activities. All those things are in this big bag, the sanchita karma. From there, some of them becomes a prarabdha, and a fraction of that becomes prarabdha, bija, kuta, falonmukha. This cycle keeps on continuing. And then how long will sanchita karma last? For a kalpa. Kalpa is what? 1000 days of Brahma, something like that. It's a pretty large. One day of Brahma is 4.32 billion years, earthly years. So we will never escape this. And in order to come out of this cycle, bhakti is said to be the only way. So how can you nullify karma with more karma? Anybody? Let's open it up for discussion.
I don't think so, Prabhuji.
Why? There always has to be a why.
Well, we have three karmas as we have learned. One is your good karma, your negative karma, and then we have akarma. So your good karma gives you good deeds. That doesn't mean it nullifies your negative karma. So if there is something good happening in your life, something came from the good side of it. So it's not like a balance sheet.
Yeah.
You will not, plus and minus doesn't make it zero. So
yeah, exactly. That's the key point. It's not like, oh, I gave some charity $100 to temple. Therefore, last week I ate a chicken tikka masala. The activity of killing that chicken will automatically be nullified. No way. You will get the activity of the good karma and you will get the activity of the bad karma too. Like in my own life, I ate a lot of chicken, and then just like chicken's neck is cut, my neck was also cut in a surgery. My thyroid had cancer and they removed the cancerous thyroid, right? So I can relate to those things. Whatever activity you do in life, it'll come back and it'll haunt you. It's never going to go away. So every activity has an unequal and opposite reaction. So it's not equal and opposite reaction like Newton's third law of motion. There it says force is equal to mass into acceleration. If I hit some wall with a force of 2 newtons, then the ball will bounce back to me with a force of 2 newtons because it's equal and opposite reaction, minus some friction, right? If there is some friction, so if you send it with 2 newtons force, it might come back to you with 1.8 newtons back. This is like the metric system I'm using. In America, we use like the pound second system. In any case, so it's not like if you hit something, it will come back with equal. It could be unequal also. Sometimes you do a small mistake and it can have a very big consequence. For example, if you go to a restaurant and then you say, okay, get idli sambar, get paratha, mooli paratha, lacha paratha, this, that. Okay, then you're expecting the bill to be maybe $50, $60. Suddenly the waiter will bring you a check for $1 million. How do you feel? That is why we have to be very, very careful. You don't know what activity will produce the complexity in the result. Like the famous story of Maharaj Riga is said many, many times, like my kids also remind me this. So Maharaj Riga had thousands of cows. So he gave many cows as donation to one Brahmana. Then one of the cow that was given as donation strays off back into Maharaj's Goshala. The next day, he donates the same cow to a different Brahmana. The first Brahmana recognizes this cow in the second Brahmana's herd. He says, "Arey Baba, this is my cow." He says, "No, Maharaj gave me. This is my cow." If it were a gold coin, they could have divided half and half. But how do you divide a cow? You cannot. Both of them go to the king and say, "Maharaj, this is my cow. Maharaj, this is my cow. Maharaj, you gave it to me. How can you take it back?" So Maharaj did not have a clear-cut answer. Because he did not have a clear-cut answer, he was born as a lizard in his next life. Because he, quote unquote, cheated that Brahmana out of his donation. And for no fault of his, right? He was a very good king. He had thousands of cows. He gave some cows to one Brahmana. If the cow came back in the night, how is he supposed to know? He's not going to memorize every cow's features. So for unknowingly doing that sin, he became a lizard. And we do knowingly so many sins, right? So our Sanchita karma, the big bag of karma, is growing bigger and bigger every day. So what are we going to do? It's a very, very tough situation actually for us. So unless we come to our senses, we will keep on taking birth and getting the fruits of our past karma. In one lifetime, it could be a car accident. One lifetime, it could be a divorce. One lifetime, it could be, in our temple, one of our congregation members, he lost a leg in a car accident. So he's like lame. He's on a prosthetic leg all his life. One of my friends, he lives very close to my home here. His son was coming on a motorbike, 17-year-old from Seattle to where we live, to my friend's home. A truck hit him, he died on the spot. Right? So life after life, this karma is chasing us. One lifetime, it's taking away your hand or leg. One lifetime, it is taking away your life. One lifetime, it's putting you in Somalia in a civil war situation. One lifetime, you may be born as a hunchback girl and nobody wants to marry you because you are a soul, right? You are not the body. You could be a girl in one lifetime and a boy in the next lifetime. So in this way, our nasty activities are chasing us life after life. So we have to put an end to this cycle. Otherwise, this keeps on going and going and going. You're taking birth and dying and again taking birth and again dying. Unless we choose to put an end to this cycle, nobody's going to stop it. Your husband cannot stop it. Your wife cannot stop it. Your kid cannot stop it. Your parents cannot stop it. Every soul is unto themselves. There's equal opportunity. Anybody can practice devotion, but every soul is unto themselves. I'm just giving you knowledge, but I cannot save you. Tomorrow, if Yamraj comes and then says, "Okay, time up." I don't want to say which one of you, but time up, Mr. X or Miss Y. You have to come with me to hell. I have some justice to dispense. You have done this. Every activity that we are doing is getting stored in some cloud storage up there. And then Yamaraj will do a print PDF of all the sins that you have done. And then he will direct his assistants to say, "Okay, in this lifetime, this fellow did this. In this lifetime, this fellow did this. He paid for some of these deeds while he was on earth, but this is the balance. So go roast him." Right? The founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken will be fried in hell for many, 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 many lifetimes. No doubt, because he has been frying chicken for so long. So you cannot escape. And then these questions are asked by Uddhava to Krishna. So what should I do? How can I escape? And Narada Muni is asking the same question to Krishna. Kapila Muni's, not Kapila Muni, Kapila Muni's mother, So Kardama Muni marries Devahuti and they have a son called Kapila Muni, who is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality. So he's asking this question, oh, how can these souls who are, roaming around in this material world, life after life, normally we roam around, right? We go to New York, we go to Atlanta, we go to Mumbai, we go to Chennai, but the soul is roaming from millions of lifetimes. So all the people are asking the same question. What about these fools and rascals who are roaming around in this multitude of bodies for millions of lifetimes? What to do with them? Lord's answer is always the same. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami ma suchaha. Abandon all varieties of duties and simply surrender unto me. I will take care of their sins and give them liberation. So nobody can escape. Trump cannot escape. Biden cannot escape. Osama bin Laden cannot escape. All the people think that they can escape with their crimes. Nobody can escape. Alexander cannot escape. Alexander the Great, as he's called. So why am I telling you all this? Because bhakti can burn this bad karma. Right? There is a chain of sinful activities and their concomitant distresses. Look up this word. Concomitant. It means something that is, as a result, simultaneously happening. Naturally accompanying or associated. And the conditioned soul, we are souls. We are suffering life after life due to this sins. We have to come out of this cycle. Krishna will not say, okay, I will take you out. No, you have to put in that effort to come out of this cycle. And meanwhile, we are creating further sufferings for his future life. Right, I went to Badrinath, I took bath in the Ganges. As soon as I came out of Ganges, I felt very light, as if all the sins were taken off my body. But then again, I came back to Seattle and I'm committing more sins. So these sins will be reserved for my future life. Unless, of course, I fix myself and quickly surrender to Krishna so that he can relieve me of this burden. And legal implication, lawsuits. People suffer from that. Birth in a low and degraded family. Uneducated or very ugly. Right? All these are reminders that we made some mistakes. Some people are very beautiful, some people are very ugly. They did not choose to be like that. Oh, and scientists may say, oh, genes and this and that, some cockamamie stories. But ultimately, based on our activities in our past life, we are given the current body. And if we make mistakes, we may be, in a very deformed body in our next lifetime, for example. So, okay. So whoever was reading, please continue.
There are many results of past sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment, and we may be suffering in the future due to our present sinful activities. But all of these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take to Krishna consciousness. As evidence for this, Rupa Goswami quotes a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This verse is in connection with Lord Krishna's instruction to Uddhava, where he says, "My dear Uddhava, devotional service unto me is just like a blazing fire that can burn into ashes unlimited fuel supplied to it." The purport is that as a blazing fire can burn any amount of fuel to ashes, so devotional service to the Lord in Krishna consciousness can burn up all the fuel of sinful activities. For example, in the Gita, Arjuna thought that fighting was a sinful activity, but Krishna engaged him on the battlefield under his order, and so the fighting of the devotional service. Fighting became devotional service. Therefore, Arjuna was not subjected to any sinful reaction.
So there are many important points here. Let's go to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, repeat after me. Yatagnisu samariddharchihi. Karoti edamsi basmasat.
Karoti yedhamsi basmat.
Tata madvishaya bhaktir.
Tadhamat vishaya bhaktir.
Uddhavainamsi krishnanaham. Krishnasaha.
Naisamsi Krishnasaha.
Yeah, this is a little difficult Sanskrit. Normally Bhagavad Gita is a little easier. My dear Uddhava, just like a blazing fire turns firewood into ashes, similarly, devotion unto me completely burns to ashes sins committed by my devotees. So how do you get out, right? I mean, we talked about this cycle, never-ending cycle. How do you get out? On your own, you cannot. And good karma does not burn bad karma. Good karma and bad karma are like two tracks of a railway track, railroad track. They will never meet. They're both parallelly going on. So what do? You have to take shelter of the Creator so that the sins are burned to ashes. Okay, so Srijana, please read this.
One should carefully note that the Lord refers to devotion that is like a blazing fire. To commit sinful activity on the strength of chanting the holy name is the greatest offense, and the devotion of one who commits this offense cannot be compared to a blazing fire of love for Krishna. As stated in the previous verse, a sincere loving devotee, because of immaturity or previous bad habits, may be disturbed by his senses, even though he has accepted Lord Krishna as the only goal in his life. But if, even by chance, the devotee accidentally falls down without premeditation or indifference, the Lord immediately burns to ashes his sinful reactions, just as a blazing fire immediately consumes an insignificant piece of wood. Lord Krishna is glorious, and one who takes exclusive shelter of the Lord receives the unique benefits of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah, very nice. Devotion is like a blazing fire. But at the same time, when you're chanting the holy name, you should not think, oh, because I'm committing sins, I'll chant holy name and I'll nullify it. That is an offense, aparad, right? People, just like this is not baniya business. Baniya business means you give me $10, I'll give you $10 worth of stuff. No, you're not trading with the Lord. What you're doing is you are naturally doing devotional service. Once in a while, mistakes will happen. And if the devotee accidentally falls down without premeditation means intentionally committing sin or indifference or being careless. So you should be careful, but sometimes you'll make mistakes. Then the Lord immediately burns to ashes such a person's sinful reaction. So you should perform devotion properly. Means you have to perform physical seva, not just theoretical. Like this morning, I went to the back of the temple. There were a lot of cardboard boxes in which all the vegetables come for our cooking of bhoga for the Lord, which becomes prasadam after the Lord eats it. So you cannot say, oh, this is not devotional service. Yeah, you have to keep the temple clean, right? So I went in. Luckily, there was rain yesterday, so all the cardboard boxes became very soft. So I could just quickly crush them and put them in the recycle bin. Now, is that devotional service? Doesn't look like it. It's just crushing cardboard boxes, but it is, because it is in relationship with Krishna, right? Anything in relationship with the Lord is also transcendental. And if you're crushing cardboard boxes in your backyard at your home, that may or may not be devotional service, depending upon what your consciousness is. But when you do it for Krishna in the temple, it is devotional service. So you have to find excuses to serve the Lord. If today there is nothing then you invent some excuse to serve the Lord. You call your neighbors, cook nicely, vegetarian food, offer to the Lord and feed them. And they'll ask you, oh, why did you call us today? Oh, I just felt like offering bhoga to the Lord. And then I did this and I'm feeding you now. That's it. So you have to find an excuse to serve the Lord. Of course, there are enough excuses. Janmashtami, Ram Navami, so many festivals, right? Every 15 days you have Ekadasi. So the calendar, the Vaishnava calendar is in such a way that you have enough opportunity to serve the Lord. Enough opportunity. But if you ignore it, then you will miss the boat. Right? So if there is a ball game and if there is an opportunity to go and say clean the temple floor, you should choose cleaning the temple floor versus the ball game. Ball game is just additional karma. It is building more karma. Whereas cleaning the temple floor burns karma. Right? I know Aryan, who is on this call, he goes to temple, he works 3 hours at a stretch in the temple. The other day I saw him picking out beans for cooking for Krishna. He does cleaning of the vessels like that. So Srujana also does a lot of vegetable cutting in the kitchen. I don't know if you have a temple close by, Chandar, but you should find an excuse to serve Krishna. Krishna is not going to come and give it to you. You have to find out. Just like automatically you won't get a job at work, right? You have to make a resume, send a resume, prepare for interview, answer the questions in interview well, then you'll have a job. Same thing. The effort has to come from your side. It's not like automatically from the air, Krishna will send you a drone so that you get onto the drone and then you'll go to the spiritual world. Okay. So this burning of karma, right? We see, right? That blazing fire of love for Krishna. So this is not like a fire that will burn cardboard boxes. This is the fire of love. When you develop such intense love for Krishna that you are ready to do anything for him, then in that blazing fire, your past karma will be burned. And love is a good thing. Hate is a very bad thing, right? If you hate somebody, you are burning inside. But when you are loving somebody, especially the Supreme Lord, your heart becomes very soft like butter. So there is one more verse I want to show you where it talks about burning karma. This is my favorite. Okay. Repeat after me. Yastva Indra Gopa Matavendra Mahoswa Karma.
Yastva Indra Gopam Atavendram Aho Swakarma.
Bandhanurupa Falabhajanamatanoti.
Bandhanurupa Falabhajanam Atanoti.
Karmani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam.
Karmani nidhati kintu cha bhakti bhajam.
It's not nirdhati, it is nirdahati. Dahan. Dahan means burning. Nirdahati. Okay. Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
There is a small red insect called Indra Gopa. It's just an insect. Okay. Aryan, please read the translation and purport.
I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who burns up to their roots all fruits of activities of those who are imbued with devotion and impartially ordains for each the due enjoyment of the fruits of one actions. Of all those who walk in the path of work in accordance with the chain of their previously performed works, no less in the case of the tiny insect that bears the name of Indra Gopa than in that of Indra, the king of the Devas.
So
God is.
Yeah, so Indra is king of the Devas, is the highest. Indra Gopa Jam is the lowest. Regardless of you are the highest or lowest, We are in the chain of previously performed karma or work. Okay, purport?
God impartially induces the fallen souls to act in the way that is consequent on the deeds of their previous births and to enjoy the fruition of their labors, but out of his great mercy due to his devotees, he purges out by the fire ordeal the root of all karma, nescience and evil desires. Karma, though without beginning, is still perishable. The karma of those who work with the hope of enjoying the fruits of their labors becomes everlasting and endless and is never destroyed. The function of sannyasi is also a sort of karma befitting an ashram and is not pleasant to Krishna when it aims at liberation. Example, a desire for emancipation. They also receive fruition of their karma, and even if it be disinterested, their karma ends in atma mata, self-pleasure. But those who are pure devotees always serve Krishna by gratifying his senses, forsaking all attempts of karma and jnana, and being free from all desires save that of serving Krishna. Krishna has fully destroyed the karma, its desires and nescience of those devotees. It is a great wonder that Krishna, being impartial, is fully partial to his devotees.
Yeah. So this is where it comes. In the battlefield of Kurukshetra, although everybody was a relative of Krishna in the material sense, because both sides were his cousins, both sides, Pandavas and Kauravas. Krishna is impartial, but his impartiality is being partial to his devotees. He is equal to everyone, but he shows special preference to somebody who is a devotee of him. Why? Go ask him. Right? We are all, we are all nice to the neighbor's kids, but when it comes to your own kids, you have special partiality like that. So, yeah, I mean, you're not rude to the neighbor's kids, but then there is some special feeling towards your own kids. That's how Krishna is too. We are like Krishna rather. So he's impartial, he's neutral, but if you are his devotee, he shows you special mercy. So here is the science of karma. He purges out by the fire of ordeal the root of all karma. See, when you go to a church Sunday morning and say, Father, last week I slapped my brother, please forgive me. So the Catholic father will say, okay, my son, please put $20 in this hundi, whatever they call it. Hundi is the Hindu term, but so the fellow will put $20 in that box. He says, okay, your sins have been pardoned. I wish it were so easy, huh? $20 to get out of your sins. But this devotional service will purge out by the fire the root of all karma. Not only the karma is burned, but the root, this is the desire to perform bad activities. What happens? This fellow will go to church, and then at 2 o'clock, he'll go to the backyard and then again make barbecue of some animal, and then he's engaging in additional karma. So his going to the church in the morning, giving $20 and confessing to the Father is a total waste of time and money. Why? Why is his confession a waste of time and money? Srijana, thoughts?
Prabhuji, will confession be waste of time or, I mean, waste of money? I agree, because you have to go through the consequences rather than they don't disappear. But
yeah, confession is also a waste of time because the Lord may or may not accept your confession. And more importantly, as soon as you come out of church, he is doing his backyard barbecue and killing some animal, or at least baking the animal killed earlier. So he's committing more sin. So what's the point? Because the root to commit sinful activity hasn't gone away. Remember, we talked about prarabdha, bija, kuta, and phalonmukha. So this bija has not gone away. This kuta hasn't gone away, right? So what devotional service bhakti does is it kills that root of the desire to commit sin. We all have desire to commit sin, right? And there is enough opportunity to commit sin, whether it is drinking or smoking or eating meat or killing somebody or stealing something from somebody, right? At least one good thing the Bible says is don't steal. But that you should not stop there. You should go on to killing animals. Thou shalt not kill is the first commandment from the Bible, from the 10 commandments, Old Testament. But in America, every year 1 billion chicken are killed, 50 million cows are killed. So this whole country is condemned actually. Very soon something major is going to happen. Population will be wiped out in large numbers because all this sin won't go waste. It's just waiting, right? It is kuta. Kuta means hidden. It's not unmanifest, but more like hidden. Kuta is hidden. So these things will happen. And even if it doesn't happen in the next 50, 100 years, the people may die, and the wealthy people who are committing all these sins right now will be in a very deplorable situation in some other part of the world. They'll take birth again in that. Remember, we talked about those three things, either legal issues or being born in a degraded family or being born ugly so that nobody gives you much value. They just look at you and then look away because you are so ugly, like that. So all these pains are coming for those sinful parties, right? Like the Christian conception is you go to hell a little bit. Actually, no, you go to hell eternally. That's it. But the Vedic conception is you go to hell for a little while and again take birth and then realize the functions of your bad karma. So you'll be born in a degraded family. Not you, hopefully not, but somebody. And then they won't have much opportunity in that degraded family to do this, do devotional bhakti. So right now you're all born in good families. Use your, facility. Use it or lose it. Next lifetime may not be so conducive to performing devotion. At least, I was very fortunate to come across this knowledge. Otherwise, I would be continuing to sin. Now, at least I've stopped the gross part of the sin. I'm still committing subtle sins, but the gross sin like drinking alcohol, eating meat, fish or eggs, I've stopped all that gross part. Yeah. Remember this, Krishna is impartial, but he is fully partial to his devotees. Yeah, go ahead.
So just a clarification of if there are some sins you have done, like being a child or unknowing or just following the footsteps, how does they get considered?
They'll get considered as a sin. So you still have to surrender to Krishna. And then aham tvam papebhyo. What does he say? Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. I will take all of your sins. Mokshayisyami ma suchaha. And I will give you moksha, liberation. So he's giving you a certification, right? He's giving you a guarantee. Just like you buy a TV set, you'll have 1 year warranty, right? So Krishna is giving you warranty, saying that if you surrender to me, I will take away your sins. So we all have to surrender. Knowingly, unknowingly, we have committed millions of sins. We have to surrender. No option, sir, madam.
Prabhu, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So like, for example, people who let's say people who take up birth in a family, like let's say somewhere in like North Korea. So like if they're never in common contact with, let's say, Christian consciousness, or for that matter, religion, is that past karma that to get it in this life?
Yeah. So basically it said, right, you are born in a degraded family. So instead of being born in a family where you'll get this knowledge from childhood, you'll be born in a family so far away from the Vedic epicenter that you will have less option to take it up. But the corollary is very interesting. Srila Prabhupada said, everybody should receive this knowledge. So he traveled the world. How many times? 11 times he circled the world. He went to every city, major city in the world, and he established temples. He said everybody is entitled to this knowledge. So a devotee of the Lord is more merciful than the Lord. Lord said, Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. Give up everything and you surrender unto me. Until then, no chance. But devotee is saying, Arey, a lot of these poor rascals don't have this knowledge. So let me go travel and teach them. If they are not willing to listen, force them to listen. That's what he did. Right? He would give them prasadam so that people's heart is purified a little bit. And then he would give this knowledge. And it's continuing on. Like yesterday, you handed out how many burritos on the streets?
I'm not sure, but like
60 or 70 burritos, right? Yeah, so
60.
you handed 60 or 70 individual souls mercy from Krishna in form of prasadam. So these rascals have no scope whatsoever in coming in contact with Krishna consciousness. But you were the vehicle you are the via medium to give Krishna prasadam to those people. So hopefully they will take a bite of that and something starts changing in their heart. They may become a little bit more favorable.
Yeah.
Right? And people in general in India, although they commit lots of sins, they go to Tirupati, eat a little bit of prasadam. So there's a little bit of check and balance. But here in the Western world, there's no check and balance. It's pretty much like sin, sin, and sin.
Yeah.
Right? But in India also, people are very weird. They will say Balaji wines. They are using Lord Balaji's name to sell wine, which is a sinful thing. Or Venkateshwara hatcheries. So this fellow, Mr. Rao from Andhra, he started Venkateshwara hatcheries, and every day he kills thousands of birds tens of thousands of birds to be exported around the world, exported around India. And then he's using Lord Venkateshwara's name for that. So people in India are very weird, actually.
Yeah.
Venkateshwara, do you think he will pardon him? No. He'll make him born 1,000,000 times as a chicken, and his head will be cut off 1,000,000 times. And then he will say, Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. For 1,000,000 lifetimes, he won't get the chance to surrender to Krishna. Getting a chance to surrender to Krishna is also very rare.
Okay.
Yeah. You are very lucky. You are only 17 years and you are asking me these beautiful questions. I was not that lucky. Right? I came into this process only when I was 36.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I mean, maybe you are continuing from your last life. Whatever you did, it's continuing. The journey continues.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Sujana?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Yeah, the science of karma is not easy. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Egg came from chicken, chicken came from egg. So this is a continuously convoluted concept. Somewhere you made a mistake. You were kicked out of the spiritual world and you came to earth. And from then you made a couple more mistakes. Then you took 2 more births. Then you made a few more mistakes. In this way, you are taking birth millions of times, never having the opportunity to leave material world and go back to spiritual world. So one mistake is leading to the other mistake. So at some point you have to say, okay, enough is enough. Let me surrender to Krishna and get liberated.
Prabhuji, is our ultimate goal to have liberation? Is that our ultimate goal?
Our ultimate goal is to develop love of Krishna. Liberation is an intermediate step.
Okay. What
does Krishna say here? No, in the previous verse, right? Yeah, in the previous verse. Let's go there. Not this one. This on. Yeah.
It's 11 point. Okay.
Yeah, we saw that. It says that developing the love, yeah, in 11.1. Yeah, blazing fire of love for Krishna. Right? You have a bonfire that you put in your picnic. You go to a park, you put a bonfire, and then you burn some corn on the cob. But here in this blazing fire of love of Krishna, you are burning all of your sins. And then here he says that karmani nirdahati kintucha bhakti bhajam. What does karmani means? Karmani. All fruitive activities and their reactions. So we are getting reactions from something that we did like 1,348,000 lifetime. And you are blaming God. Hey, God, why are you doing this to me? Yeah, you did it, but you forgot. He remembers. So you got to pay for it.
Prabhu.
Yeah.
So because I think Srila Prabhupada, like his mission was to spread Krishna consciousness around the world.
Yes.
But, there's people who like, I guess like, what was it? Like, so is that like only one way to get liberation? Like spreading Krishna consciousness and of course chanting.
No, I mean, you have to do everything, right? You have to do the process of chanting, hearing from Bhagavatam, hearing from Bhagavad Gita, going to the dhams like Mayapur, Vrindavan. There are 5 things mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. You have to do all those 5. Plus, the 6th thing is that you have to preach to others so that others will also be benefited. Otherwise, it will be selfishness. You got this knowledge and you are just keeping it to yourself. You have to give others also a chance to develop love of Krishna. So that's what we are doing right now. I am taking this class so that I can help 4 or 5 people. Then each one of you can teach 4 or 5 people. In this way, hopefully we can touch a portion of the population. World's population is huge, 8 billion. You cannot touch everyone. But if you give out a book, just like Mahotsaha Prabhu in Atlanta and Vishnu Chitta Prabhu, they go out every day and give out these books on the streets. So hopefully, if you give like 1,000 books, 1 or 2 people will get interested. It's a tough job. It's not an easy job. But you have to do it so that others can benefit too. See, somebody posted this online and I'm able to share it through Zoom, right? So there's a lot of people working together to rescue souls in this business. Somebody creates a website, somebody puts in the fonts, somebody recites like I'm reciting, somebody's listening like you are listening. In this way, it's a cooperative endeavor. Yeah, let's do this verse also. Yam krodha kama sahaja pranayadi bhiti.
Yam krodha kama sahaja pranayadi bhiti.
Vatsalya moha guru gaurava sevya bhavaihi.
Vatsalya moha guru gaurava seva bhavai.
Sanchintyasyasya sadrisam tanuma purete.
Sanchitya tasya sadrisam tanum apurite.
Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami.
Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami.
Okay, Chandra, read this.
Devotion is of 2 kinds, namely of the nature of deference to regulation and constituted of natural feeling. Bhakti is roused by following with the tinge of faith in the rule of Shastras and instruction of the preceptors. Such bhakti is of the nature of loyalty to the scriptural regulations. It continues to be operative as long as the corresponding natural feeling is not roused. If a person loves Krishna out of natural tendency, there is the principle of raha, which is no other than a strong desire to serve, which turns into bhava or substantive feeling. When the substantive feeling is aroused, the devotee becomes an object of mercy of Krishna. It takes much time to attain this stage. Devotion, which is of the nature of feeling, is superior to that connected with spiritual regulation, soon attains to the realized state and is attractive to Krishna. Its various aspects are described in this sloga: Santa Bhava, full of reverence to superior; Dasya Bhava, full of service for carrying out the commands of the object of worship; Sakya Bhava, or natural friendly love; Vatsalya Bhava, or parental affection; and Madhura Bhava, or amorous love, are all included in the category of devotion of the nature of instinctive attachment. But anger, fear, and delusion, though they are of the nature of instinctive impulse, are not devotion in the strict sense of the term, because they are not friendly but hostile to the object. Anger is found in asuras like Sisupala, fear in Kamsa, and delusion in Panditas of the pantheistic school. They have the feelings of anger, fear, and instinctive impulse marked by complete self-forgetful identification with the non-differentiated Brahman. But as there is no friendly feeling towards the object of devotion, there is no bhakti. Again, among the feelings of Santa, Dashya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhura Santa, though indifferent and dormant in raha, is still reckoned as bhakti on account of its being a little friendly.
Okay, pause there.
There is an immense.
Yeah, let's pause there. This is like heavy topic. So basically, you have 5 types of relationships with the Lord. Shanta means reverence, very respectful to the Lord. Dasya means carrying out commands. You are a servant, Dasi. Sakya means friend, natural friendly love. You become friendly to the Lord, just like Gopas. Santa Bhava, the general population. Dasya Bhava, servant of the Lord. That's what we are trying to be. My name is Radhika Gopinath Das, means I am a servant of Radha and Krishna. Right? And then Sakya, natural friendly love. This is where it gets very, very difficult. So can you be like a friend to the Lord? Very difficult. Gopas, Gopas and Gopis, they become friendly to the Lord because they have performed devotional activities for thousands and millions of lifetimes. That's when they get elevated to that state with Krishna. Not one lifetime, thousands and millions. Vatsalya is parental. This is even more rare. So instead of thinking as friend, you are thinking Krishna is my son, right? Vatsalya. And then Madhura Bhava, or love, amorous love. This is of the gopis. They're saying, Krishna, you are my husband. So can any one of us here think, Krishna, you are my husband, you can do anything that you want to me? No, we are not in that kind of conjugal love with the Lord. So for us, Dasya is the best position. Right? And then the counter argument is anger, fear, delusion. Shishupala was always in anger. Oh, Krishna, what is this Krishna? Who is this Krishna? Like that. And then Kamsa was always in fear, 24/7. Oh, Krishna is here. Is Krishna there? Is he going to kill me? Right? And then Panditas of pantheistic school. Pantheistic means like Ganesh, worshipping Ganesha, Ganesh worshipping Durga, worshipping Vayu, all the demigod worship. Pantheism means worshipping many people instead of worshipping just Krishna. So Hinduism, unfortunately, went from monotheistic to pantheistic. Mono means one, stereo means two, panth means like multi. So you are worshipping multiple devatas. So these panditas, they're worshipping just about anybody. If you go, they'll say, okay, I'll worship you also. So that kind of behavior in fear, anger, fear, and the third quality, what is that? Anger, fear, and delusion. These three
Delusion.
qualities, delusion, So these three qualities are not bhakti. These are exactly opposite. Those five qualities like Santa, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhura, these are bhakti. We cannot cross Santa and Dasya. Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhura are reserved for much more superior beings. So for us, let's come to Dasya Bhav, to Krishna. Right? Right now we are not in Dasya Bhav, we are in Boss Bhav. Right? Everybody wants to be the boss in the material world. Everybody wants to have a title, vice president, president, CEO, like that. Right? Nobody wants to be the lowly person in a company, because we have this boss bhava, but we need to have dasya bhava, servant bhava. I am a servant of Krishna. Right? So this book, Bhakti, Art of Eternal Love. So how can you eternally love Krishna? Very, very advanced book. At the same time, it is very, very beginning book. Like you can understand this better than understanding Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is little heavy. So any questions?
Prabhu, I had a question. I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I saw some, I think Shishupal, despite I think he had like animosity or like anger towards Krishna, or isn't it true that he merged in or something into Krishna because he still,
because he was angry at Krishna, and Krishna reciprocated that by sending his Sudarshan to cut off his head. But since the Lord killed you directly, you go and merge with the impersonal Brahman, which is the energy of the Lord. But you won't get the liberation in Vaikuntha. Means you are not going to go to Vaikuntha if you are angry at the Lord. But again, you have to be so angry and so inimical that the Lord should personally come and kill you, which is a rarity. So Shishupala was lucky in that at least he got that kind of liberation. But most of the current demons on the planet, they are neither here nor there. Any other question? Okay, let's chant now. Sri Krishna Chaitanya.
Sure.